Hey everyone, back to you into today's video. We're going to have a look at weather next 8 to 10 days. In today's video, it takes us to around the 18th of October, so going into the second half of the month. We're going to be seeing a lot of high pressure through the course of next week. The hurricane Joaquin that we've been concerned about is going off to Spain and Portugal. It's going to have quite a big impact on the weather the next week, because if it had come this way over the weekend, it would have given us certainly a very unsettled start to next week. But as the hurricane, or the ex-hurricane as it is now, is going down in Spain and Portugal, it leaves high pressure over us. It looks like we're going to be under that high pressure for much of next week. So just going to show you how the weather patterns at this time of year, I explained all the time in the videos, but weather patterns are on a knife edge through September and October, on a knife edge between being very unsettled and being anticyclonic and settled. And if you get these hurricanes coming through, or the remains of them, then it can set up quite an unsettled pattern that takes a while to break out of. Conversely, if you miss them and they go off either to the north, or as this one's going to do, down to the south, then it just leaves you under high pressure. So you're going to have a lot of settled weather coming up over next week to 10 days. The position of the high pressure will be important. It's going to bring in some pretty chilly air from the east, I think, through the course of the first part of next week. And then it may finish up somewhere to the west. And when it gets to the west of us, we've probably got to be watching out for maybe bring down some northerly influences, or maybe some northwesterly polar maritime type influences in the second half of the month. It's a little bit uncertain, but I think some of the model output could just be hinting at the chance of some sort of northerly wind developing, or northerly blast developing, in the second half of October. So I'll have a look at all the detail on that in a moment, but before I get on with that, just very quickly to say about the ads that Galso visits. There's links to articles on all the pages. You have a browse through widgets and click through the links. If there's any articles that you're interested in, you'll be helping to pay for the website, and thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads on most pages which open out within the content of the pages, and then when you watch them, they'll just close back up and you don't need to do anything with them, get rid of them, because they'll just close up on their own. So thanks for doing that. It's all helping to pay for the website. So I'm going to start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly charts. We've got the ECWF on the top here, and the GFS is actually on the bottom. Flip the charts around. So 500 millibars, 18,000 feet, is an important area in the atmosphere, because that's where we've got high pressure, low pressure moving around, or being moved around by the jet stream, which is running above. But it extrapolates to low pressure, orange and red, extrapolates to high pressure. So these are the mean charts for 8 to 10 days time away. This takes us into the second half of October, and by then the high pressure has actually gone from the east. It's sitting to the west and the northwest. So we've got this big area of above average heights here in the Atlantic to the west of us, in Cape Barbo's red coast. Then we've got this trough down to the south and the southeast through central parts of Europe. So the flow here and the jet stream is going a bit like that, which means that we're almost under a cold trough of low pressure, and they're both in agreement with that. Notice also quite a cold trough extending into much of the north and east of America, so they could have their first sort of cold shot of the autumn-winter season. So anyway, coming back to us, I think they both sort of agree with the idea that high pressure is going to be to the west, and we've got this trough across central parts of Europe within generally quite cold air, and it's just how much this high pressure goes to the west and the north that will determine whether we're going to have a northerly shock coming through. We've got to be watching out for the high pressure to be going somewhere up here. If it gets up to that sort of region, which is around Greenland, start seeing the red colours going through there, then we could really start to open the door to a northerly blast, perhaps sometime through the second half of October. There are a few hints of that within the model output at the moment, not greatly indicated by any means, but just reading between the lines, and that's what you sometimes have to do as a forecaster and sort of commentator's eye, if you like. Just have to read between the lines, and reading between the lines, I think there is the chance that we could get the high pressure up towards Greenland in the second half of the month. Probably not lasting all that long, but we could bring down quite a cold shot from the north, perhaps. The GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles show that we're going to be generally below average, with the temperatures going up to the middle part of the month anyway. The thick red line here is the 30-year temperature average, and you see that most of the coloured lines are generally below the red line, which is below the 30-year average. Dates are on the bottom of the charts here, of course, so this takes us to the 17th of October, just there. And by then, we may start to see a little bit of a recovery in the temperatures, but a lot of scads here in the second half of the chart, with some of the members going quite cold, some of them going a bit milder into the third week of October. There are a few there that do bring down quite cold northerly shots. A lot of dry weather coming up as well, so no real precipitation spikes up until the start of next week at least. After that, we don't really bring them back with much conviction, to be honest. There are a few spikes there, but overall you wouldn't say that's a change to wet weather by any means. So a lot of dry weather going up to the middle part of the month, I think. The temperature anomaly is colder than average for the coming week, so going from the 8th to the 16th of October in those blue colours there. The core of the card is actually to the east. Quite interesting this, because where we've got the core of the coldest temperatures through the coming week, which is sort of Poland, and then going east into the east of Europe, on into Western Russia. That's sort of where we have the highest temperatures through the course of the summer. So where it's been hottest for an extended period across Europe over the past few months, it's actually going to be coldest, really, through the course of the coming week. That may be an indication of what's going to happen over the winter. It's a bit speculative that, but have to wait and see. But certainly a cool week anyway coming up for most parts of Europe. British Isles included, we're going to be around a degree or so below average. Going to be a dry week as well, so rainfall anomalies from the 8th to the 16th of October, looking significantly drier than average, as they are for many parts of France. Scandinavia also drier than average. Central Europe a little bit wetter, but you have to go down to the Mediterranean, really, in southeastern Europe to find anything significantly wetter than average. Here's the generic charts. GFS for Sunday shows high pressure in across Scandinavia. There's the easterly wind bringing pretty chilly air from the east. As we go through the course of next week, high pressure dominates through much of the time. Eventually it sort of moves over the country by middle part of the week, but that is within pretty cold air, so don't be surprised if there's some pretty cold nights with that. Certainly chance of ground frost, maybe even the first air frost of the season coming up through the course of next week. Second half of next week takes that high pressure a little bit to the west of the country, so this is the position by Friday the 16th, with the high pressure generally sitting slightly to the west. Just means it's going to be staying dry throughout most of the week, but we probably lift the temperatures up a little bit through the course of the second half of next week as we cut off that easterly flow. We go out to day 10 and the high pressure is still in there across the country, so this run of the GFS is not sort of lifting that high pressure up towards Greenland. The upper air temperatures look like this for the start of next week. Pretty chilly air appearing through the course of the first part of next week. Anyway, you can see those green colours turning up. That's pretty cool air. Certainly the chance of night frost with that. It's not cold. The cold temperatures are still up to the north with a -5 and -10 isotherm. So it isn't cold, wintry air, but it is cool autumnal air, and certainly cool enough for ground frost and maybe even air frost. The ECWF looks like this was for Sunday, bringing that easterly flow across the country. We run through a week with high pressure dominating. We keep more of an easterly though across England and Wales through the first part of next week. That may bring in morning wave cloud to England and Wales, and possibly 1 or 2 showers around the southeast coast as well. That easterly really continues into the second half of next week down in the southeast. But eventually we sort of bridge a high pressure through the country by the end of next week, so we finish up very similar to the GFS. By day 10, so the 18th of October, the high pressure is generally out to the west of the country. And actually, we could be setting up a northerly here. The high pressure going further to the west and the northwest compared to the GFS. And the consequences, but this area of low pressure around Iceland could be going on a northwest-southeast direct trajectory like that. If it does so, it'd be very interesting if we could see the chart that follows on. But if we could see the chart that follows on, what may happen is that the low pressure could be sitting somewhere around there, the high pressure going somewhere up to there, and we could be opening the door to northerly winds sort of 24 hours on from that chart. So as I say, sometimes you have to read between the lines with models, and that really isn't all that far from setting up a northerly. The GM finally shows easterly winds coming in through the start of next week, bringing chilly air off the continent. High pressure dominates through much of the week, but we get through to the end of next week and into the weekend of 17th, 18th of October. That high pressure does get out to the west, actually. We get more retrogression with that, and eventually we do sink that trough down across the country with high pressure to the northwest. So we've got a trough in there right over top of the country by Sunday the 18th of October. The ridge is out here, and it means that the flow is going like that, and we're definitely opening the door to northerly winds there. It won't be overly cold. I've had a look at the upper air temperatures with that. In fact, I can show you the upper air temperatures with that chart. You probably not, so it should be very cold, but it isn't particularly cold. That's a fairly warm trough, and that's really just an indication that it's still October, it's not winter. But certainly that wind coming down with the low pressure would feel cold. And as the low pressure exits, of course, and we get more of a northerly, northeasterly, then the temperatures would drop. And in any case, it's 10 days away, so detail like upper air temperature not really to be relied upon. But GM is always a bit different, so don't necessarily take it too seriously. But reading between model output this morning, I think there is the chance of going to the third week of October of bringing some sort of northerly shot into the country. But for the shorter time frame, which is really the weekend and through most of next week, high pressure is going to be dominating. So loads of dry weather coming up. We're going back to cold nights, sort of mildish days in the sun, but actually probably cooling a little bit through the course of next week. So even in the sun, it may feel a bit cool by day next week, and certainly cold at night. And then getting into the second half of the month, into the third week of October, and we're going to be watching out for the chance of northerly winds. We'll have a look at that perhaps in more detail, that chance of north winds, with the CFS and JMA models tomorrow. JMA Friday, so have a look at the month head look ahead. So come back for that. But loads of dry weather continuing next week. That's it for now. Thanks for